What's up, everyone? It's Spencer here from Scoped Exposure.
And Jessa from Damage Control, and together we make the host of Through Our Lens podcast.
And we are putting together the Scoped 5-year fest that's happening here in Calgary.
This fest is happening August 26th and 27th in the city of Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
We got a ton of great bands who are playing. We got a bit of a California takeover with Strife, Tsunami, and Scowl.
We've also got IM joining us from Texas, along with Ballista. We've got Karma from Chicago, Change from the Northwest, and a ton of other great supporting acts. Tickets can be bought at www.damagecontrol.store. We've got weekend passes as well as single day offerings up there now.
You can also find the ticket link in the description of this podcast as well as either of our socials. This is something we've worked on for a long, long time. Get your tickets now and we'll see you there.
Like, I'm sorry, Posty, if you're watching this.
Posty, we love you.
But Posty, baby, drink Miller Lite. It's way better.
One more ingredient to this battle, our secret ingredient. The theme on which our chefs will offer their succulent variations. Today's secret ingredient is...
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. We go from Western Canada to the Midwest, and I'm very excited to be chatting with a good friend of mine, someone that I've got to rub shoulders with a lot through different shows and festivals and captured a lot of their different bands. We got Alex from Rot and While God Sleeps and a schwackload of other bands that I'm sure they're going to talk about. Dude, I'm very excited to finally have you on the podcast.
Dude, same. It's been almost a year in the making here. We've been talking about it for quite some time, but we're both busy bees, and it's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah,
we've had to cancel and reschedule like 4 times.
Yeah, I think it's been I appreciate you being flexible because I think some of the rescheduling, I think it's a two-way street at times.
It goes both ways. Last time you hit me up and you're like, "You ready?" and I was like, "Oh my God, I completely forgot. No, I can't. I'm sorry." It's for sure been a both-way thing. So
I think
happy we made it work.
Agreed. I think the initial times, like, the more that I do this podcast and the more serious that I'm like really trying to make this like, okay, I'm really going to be turning up the juices on it. Like when we hit season 3, especially going into 2023, it's just like making sure my process is refined. Like obviously we have like our podcast producer Jordan now in the mix, and we have like a calendar, like invite thing. So like it's just like it's just like small steps into making the perfect beast and machine to output the best content for sure.
Totally. It's been cool to like watch you and your channel, but the podcast as well, like expand and like see what you've been able to do with it. It's been really cool.
Yeah.
The progression has been fun to follow.
Yeah. I feel like Alex and I's like, there's a lot of history because I remember the very first time that we got to link up was when Swing Low was playing the pre-show for Wild Rose, and that was, that was the second time I was filming them, but that was the first time when you were on the drums, and then, that's when I learned about War Prayer, and then War Prayer had its final show, there's all these different...
Yeah, there's a lot of history.
Yeah, which obviously we're gonna,
we'll dive in,
rip apart and talk about on the episode. But obviously, before we get into the music chats, we have to check some bevs. And
check time.
I feel like, I know that you came prepared. So tell the people at home what you're gonna be sipping on for the episode.
All right, right here we got a Sun for Miles. It's a hazy IPA from Lua Brewing in Des Moines, Iowa.
Cool.
Probably can't see anything on there. They're rated one of the best breweries in the country right now. And my girlfriend and I made a trip down there last weekend to check out the tap room and just like spend some time away from home. And the brewery I work at is like good friends with them, and so like they hooked it up, and I saved this specific beer for this specific event.
Oh, so
we're gonna
sweet.
crack into that.
Do you often do like specific trips just to try out different beverages, or is that kind of like a first time kind of thing?
Definitely not a first time, but it's not like all the time. As far as like from here to Des Moines, it's like 3.5 hours. So around our city, like very often, you know, something that my girlfriend and I like to do together is try new beers and go to different breweries, and just like both being in the industry, it's kind of like R&D in a way, but it's also like, it's fun for us to like go and like talk about it and like, do that whole thing.
Yeah.
So yes and no. It has been a while. Like it's rare that I'm driving 3.5 hours just like go to a place to drink beer. So, like, yeah. And when you boil it down. But.
Yeah. But I do think, you know, if it wasn't obvious, like a lot of Alex's like background when it comes to being a brewer and like his love of, you know, the bevs as well. It was, oh, you got to get that. We almost had to spill very early into the podcast.
Oh, we were ready for it. We're good.
Yeah. But yeah, that's obviously a talking point that I want to get to as well. I always love being able to talk about like the different worlds that, you know, we all like meet through punk and hardcore, but then there's like learning.
But everyone's got something else going on too.
Absolutely.
Like, whether it's a career or a hobby
or something in between
or whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's got.
I feel like, you know, if I'm being completely transparent, and this is for all the people that kind of listen every week or, you know, every episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast, I think for me, like, I've been disappointed in myself of my bev game. And what I mean by that is I think before all the beverage sponsorships and all like the huge mountain of liquid death that was sitting behind me a lot of this season.
That shit's so funny.
I was just like drinking a lot of that just to get through like a lot. So I was like, I need to make sure that I bring something that matches definitely something that you would be bringing to the show. So I'm drinking a Green Demon, which is a blue raspberry lemonade sour.
Fire.
Done by New Level Brewing, who does sponsor the podcast.
Yep, I've followed them like since you first posted about it.
Yeah.
So I've kept
there was a pop-up maybe a few weeks ago where it was like a bunch of hardcore kids were doing like, you know, t-shirt swaps and like, you know, selling records and all that and vintage kind of shit. And I went down there just to check it out for a little bit, and I caught up with Drew, and he's like, this is just the #1 seller of all time all through the summer. So
awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this cracked, and then I will cheers you, and hopefully I don't spill like you were about to. Cheers to you, Alex. Really excited to do this.
Cheers,
podcast,
brother.
bro.
I'm very stoked that we're finally doing this.
Also, I want to compliment you on your fit because
thank you.
It's like the yellow with blue print, and then the blue hat with the yellow stitching. So I think
I'd be lying if I said I didn't plan that. So.
I gotta appreciate it. As soon as you jumped on, I was like, damn, I'm just your typical hardcore kid wearing all black, all that kind of shit. But so Alex, as you know, I'm sure you've listened to a number of different episodes of fellow homies who've been on this show before.
It's also the second Rot episode.
That's true.
Errol did one a long time ago. Feels like now.
It's the first While God Sleeps podcast, though.
Okay, true.
I think. Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, any new guests that I have on the show, I always like to ask, like, getting a little bit of context about how they got into this whole schwack of worlds as far as heavy music goes. So tell me the first time that you heard, your first breakdown, your first heavy record, band, screaming, however you want to say.
Totally. So growing up, my uncle, like cousin, mom, family member, a cousin essentially, not literally a cousin, but we consider them cousins. Family, just like mom's cousins' kids. So like not it doesn't matter. Regardless, someone I spent a lot of time with in my family was super into Napster.
Okay.
So he had like this bank of like 16,000 something songs. And, you know, it had anything from like, it was like Dave Chappelle skits to Tool to Dr. Dre to the Foo Fighters, everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anything you can think of, he had it on this like little hard drive. And when iTunes became like really popular, when I was early middle school, probably, I just like kind of had access to that. So like, it was definitely both a good thing and a bad thing. There's definitely some stuff on there that as a young child, I should have not have been hearing, but it was things like Tool and System of a Down and that kind of stuff that I remember him like showing me and then me going and finding later in that library. And then just kind of like going from there. And then listening to that stuff as I grew up. My parents were both into somewhat heavy music. My mom was always listening to like Linkin Park and Evanescence and that kind of stuff. My dad was into hair metal in that era. So like just a lot of culmination of that kind of stuff. They bought me a guitar and I just like started learning riffs from metal bands. And then it just like snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. I saw the music video for Stick Stickly by Attack Attack in 7th grade. Yeah, straight up. I remember the day. I was at my grandma's house sitting at her computer. One of my friend Chase posted it on Facebook and I watched it just because like, oh, my friend's sharing a music video. I should watch it. And it was the Stick Stickly music video. I had never heard anything like it in my life. And I just remember
seen anything like that.
Yeah, literally. Life. I mean, yeah, you've all seen that video. It's insane.
We've all, If you haven't seen that video, you are the 1%.
Right
you are the 1%.
Yeah, pause this, go watch it right now.
Don't listen to those podcasts. Watch that music video.
Yeah, literally. So I saw that. Oh, the music video, that's Austin Carlisle on vocals, but not Austin Carlisle in the music video.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So sick.
I hope that if I ever get to interview anyone from like it's so weird. It's so weird talking about that band now just because like they have returned, but like not with original members. And that's kind of a weird thing. It's one of those projects. I can't believe now we're just like, riffing on Attack Attack.
I'm not mad.
I'm not mad either. I just think it's like Attack Attack in 2022 to me. And, I hope this doesn't completely close the door on any potential of any of them wanting to come on, because I generally would be interested in having an original member to talk about the legacy of that band. Because I definitely
there's a lot.
I think they undeniably had an impact on alternative music as a whole. 100%. Like I feel like they, I think it's just an undeniable thing as far as their timing. But I do think that's a classic example of a band that in some cases should have just died and went away and maybe formed new bands versus coming back and
which they did.
Which they kind of did.
None of them worked out. All right, I'm not going to talk shit because that's bad karma. That's fine. But they did that and then, brought Attack Attack back, which, again, whatever.
I mean...
It's none of my business. It's none of my business.
The likelihood that a original member of Attack Attack is listening to this podcast is very slim, but not impossible.
Not impossible.
Something I wanted you to maybe clarify or go a bit deeper on is... you were talking about Napster and you were saying like there were certain things that you were listening to, but then there was even certain things that you're like, maybe I shouldn't be listening to that at such an early age. But like, what was those things from your perspective looking back now? Because I think most, moms or parents would be like, System of a Down or Korn is like like that is probably like just, I don't understand it. So it's like probably demon music for my kids. But like nowadays, like now that we're all like established adults, we're like, oh, that's just like a really like crazy thing that they put on a record. But were there any things that you're like, oh, like this was actually a little fucked up that I was being exposed to this year?
So my parents were like pretty cool about metal music and that heavy music because they got it. Like they totally got like the first CD I ever bought like myself. Like I remember walking to Target with my parents and being like, I have money, I'm buying this CD. It was a Slipknot self-titled. And they were just like, totally, like metal band. It's like, they got it.
Yeah, they wear masks? Cool.
Totally.
Right.
And things I wasn't allowed to listen to was like Eminem.
Okay.
And it was stuff like that. Eminem, Dr. Dre, shit in that realm. Just like things that like the lyrics are very specific and pronounced as opposed to, you know, things like corn. Or it's like there's a lot more to bury lyrics in metal and rock music as opposed to a beat and then some guy essentially talking over it rhythmically, rapping.
Right.
So
it's
like
that classic, like,
things,
I can't understand what they're saying, but it's like it's harder to understand. It's not impossible.
Totally.
But yeah.
But it was also like the music my parents liked to a degree. So like,
okay,
my parents showed me Green Day, that kind of thing. So like they like, not, it's different, but like, you know what I mean? Like my parents, they knew it was up. So like I was exposed to guitar music per se from, you know, the time I was born. So yeah, it was like that kind of stuff that I wasn't allowed to listen to, but that made me want to listen to it more. And like, so I was definitely walking around in middle school, listening to Eminem and like repeating the words, having no idea what I was saying. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they were worried about. So like, I get it, you know, but
yeah, it is interesting that, you know, sometimes your parents will either have that effect of like, oh, this is what we do. And then you like do the total opposite because you don't want to be that. But then, you know, there have been lots of people who come on the podcast that are like, without my dad exposing me to like Pantera or like, you know, the big
Metallica,
Metallica, like it, like that was cool. So it's, I don't know. I'm sure that there's similar stories for other genres of music. Like, well, my dad was really big into country and that's what put me on to so-and-so. But I do think that it is interesting just with the whole, like, as you grow up and you just naturally want to rebel as a child, but like music is kind of like the one of exceptions. Fast forwarding, we're back at the Stickly music
video. We're back in the Tech Tag. All right.
Yeah.
So this was like right when it was 7th grade. So I was like 12, right around the time when I started like actually picking up drums. So like I watched that music video. I put it on my iPod, or I put it on my PSP. That's what it was. Yeah. So I had just joined like Drumline at my school. So I had like a bunch of MP3s that I downloaded on my PSP, and that was one of them. But then it was also like all sorts of like top 40 stuff, you know, like Trey Songz and Nicki Minaj and like that stuff.
Right.
All over the place. Along with System of a Down and whatever, you know, it was very much versatile, but still like a lot of top 40s and that kind of stuff. And then Stickly by Attack Attack. And I think that, and then I think This Calling by All That Remains was on there from Rock Band.
Yep.
Because that was the closest thing I had heard to Attack Attack at that time. Was All That Remains, that song. And then I remember being on the bus to like a Drumline event, and a friend who is like still a very good friend of mine to this day, like took that and was like, oh, well, like, let's see what you're listening to. And I was like, oh yeah, here. And she looks at me and she goes, like, this is bad. Like, this is all bad. Like, why is this all bad except this one song?
Right.
And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I just watched this music video like 3 weeks ago. I don't know. And she's like, I've got something for you. Like, I'll see you next week at practice or whatever. She brings me her CD case, and it is loaded. And it's like Messengers by August Burns Red, Malevolence by Fleet for Purging, a few different Norma Jean records, Haste the Day, mostly Christcore.
Yeah.
But still like all these heavy metalcore bands. It was my first actual exposure to metalcore in like a really big sense, like where I was able to like listen to all these CDs and be like, okay, this is a genre as one.
Right.
It's not just this one song I heard that sounds like this band, it's like, this is a genre. This is a thing that people are doing.
Yeah.
And like, that was just like mind blowing. I remember running those CDs into the ground. So most of them I still listen to today. I'm pretty sure like 2 weeks ago I posted a Plea for Purging song on my Instagram story.
Yeah. Plea for Purging is definitely, they get lumped in with that whole like Christcore Face Down.
Totally.
Like that kind of era. But like some of
they were a
heaviest
step above
shit,
musically.
they were
100%.
way ahead of their time.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
100%. 100%. That was awesome.
Yeah, but like, so even just some of those records that you mentioned are like so pivotal for a lot of those specific bands.
Oh yeah.
And like it's cool that you almost got like a metalcore snapshot encyclopedia for whatever year it was.
Yeah. In 2010, I think. It was like 2011 maybe. But yeah, it was just like this whole thing. And then in Minnesota here, we used to do something called Sunshine Music Festival. It was a big Christian music fest. But they had a really good bill of heavy bands. Always.
Yes.
So I ended up getting to like go to that after I had like learned to love all these bands and like fallen it, not learned, but like fallen in love with all these bands. And then I ended up getting to go to that fest and just like, I saw moshing for the first time. And like all this sort of, I just fell in love.
So here's the $1 million question of this podcast. Were you at Sunshine Fest 2011? Because I was there.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was the first year I went.
Okay. Because that bill was Plea was playing.
Yep.
Gideon was playing. That was the first time I saw Gideon, and that just like totally broke my mind.
Yeah.
As far as how like heavier, like like it's like metal, but it has like just this like tough edge to it.
Yeah.
Who is that band? That is very bad, and they were on Face Down, and they were like super poppy.
Oh. I could name 1,000.
It might come to me a little bit later, but I think For Today was also playing.
Yeah. Do you remember the band from here? They're called Your Memorial.
Your Memorial with Blake on the fucking vocals. Yeah. That band was again ahead of its time. They were awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Hands also played.
Yeah.
Did you fuck with Hands?
I'm pretty sure that was the first year I went.
Okay, so that's wild that like you and I were
in the same room 12 years ago or 11 years ago.
Because that was my very
first hockey arena.
In the hockey arena. And do you remember when I think it was during Plea for Purging, and they told everyone to get low, and you think everyone's gonna jump, and then they started just like rolling. They did a roll of death, not a wall of death. So everyone's just, dude, this is so bananas. Cause like
that's crazy.
That was my very first hardcore festival. I'll call it that. Cause they have the main stage that has like
totally
1,000 Foot Krutch,
Family Force 5.
Yeah, Family Force 5.
Skillet. Oh my God, I saw Family Force 5 so many times.
So the context there is it was just like because I was one of those kids that grew up in the church and like got exposed to heavy music through the Face Down and the Solid States and Trustkill and all that shit.
Absolutely.
And our youth group was like, hey, there's this festival in the States. Let's all drive down and go to it. And like I knew a couple of the bands, and I feel like that just like that really like sealed the deal as far as like, just being able to see like people pitting, people doing like circle pits around
the
where,
whole
where the fucking
building.
The soundboard is in the middle of the hockey rink.
That was
like,
a huge thing at Sunshine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was like so many.
That's awesome.
I think it was.
So
I think it was when Plea for Purging was playing. Someone was stage diving, but they told, I want this person to stage dive from the stage to all the way to the back of our booth.
Yeah.
Or they started at the back of the merch table and then went all the way back. This
Yeah.
is such a trip down memory lane for
That's
me.
crazy. Dude, yeah, I went like a few years, and then a band I played and got to play 1 year. And then the fest is not a thing anymore, and it really fell off the last few years. But
I'm trying to
that
pull
was
up
like
the
my roots for sure.
I'm trying to pull up the 2011 like full lineup because okay. Well, lineup for Sunshine Fest 2011. Okay, Switchfoot, Aaron Gillespie, Anne Berlin, A Plea for Purging, As Hell Retreats.
I was gonna say As Hell Retreats, War of Ages probably played.
I think War of Ages did play. I'm gonna skip some of these. Oh, Close Your Eyes played, which was one of my favorite bands.
Yep, okay. And that was like
during that time,
right before what was his name? Shane? Is that the singer's name?
Yes.
So right before he left the band.
Yes.
Yep. So that was for sure that first year that I went. Because Close Your Eyes, they never played the fest after that.
Right. A little bit of a tease. I am in the DMs with Close Your Eyes because they kind of like they're coming back for Furnace Fest.
Yeah.
So we did have something on the calendar, and then we had to reschedule because Shane's wife like had a baby like the same week that it was happening. So that will probably be happening into season 3, but it will happen, and I am geeked for something like that just because
that's one of my favorite bands.
I think Shane as a whole is like one of my favorite hardcore vocalists.
Oh yeah,
I would say top 10. Demon Hunter, Disciple.
Yep.
Okay, we're on to page 2. This is very important. Like, don't skip this part of this podcast.
No, this is so important.
I'm trying to think of Flatfoot 56, Hands.
Yeah. God, I saw Flatfoot 56 was like a whole thing too at Sunshine. Like, it was like people would just run in a circle for the entire time that band would play. They would like every year. It was a thing. It was like Flatfoot 56 starts playing. Everybody's running circle pitting.
Yeah.
But it's like it was in a hockey arena, as you know. So it's like people it's basically running around a track.
Right.
You know, like a whatever like a high school field house track for 45 minutes. Well, dudes play punk music and bagpipes on stage.
Yeah.
That somehow has to do with Christ. That was always a trip.
I the Breather. This was main stage, but Lecrae, who is pretty much just like that one like rap like kind of Christian artist that like everyone loved. That wasn't
loved. I loved
Lecrae. Skillet, Sleeping Giant.
Yeah.
Texas in July.
Yeah.
Almost.
Still okay. We'll come back to Texas in July.
Yes. Yeah, let me get through the rest of this. The Color Morale, which another band that I think was a little bit ahead of time. Venya, War of Ages, and Your Memorial.
Yeah,
those were the notable ones out of
highlights.
Like some of the main stage artists. That is wild. That like made my day.
Same. That's crazy.
Your audio was crystal clear when we started, and then I was like, there was kind of like a like.
We better now?
Oh yeah, we're.
I'm sorry. It's like 1,000 degrees in here right now. I have no idea why. You can probably see me sweating through my.
Yeah, I was like, are you spilling your drink on you? But you're just straight up sweating.
Nope, I'm just sweating. It's 1,000 degrees. It sucks. We live in a 5th floor apartment with no like central air, so it's just like sun beating in all day long.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Okay. Well, yeah. Don't pass out.
Ignore the sweat. I'm chilling. We're good. I'm staying hydrated.
Yeah.
Not only do I have a beer, but I've also got a beer, so we're staying hydrated.
Yeah. It's very cool. Like again, just so many memories that are flooding back, and it's like one of those things. Like we probably like stood roughly by each other
Seriously,
during certain
like
bands.
except I was probably about 4.5 feet tall and weighed 90 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but it is funny because I remember I bought a Venya shirt at that fest, and I think the thing that attracted me to it is like the band was awesome and they like sounded way more like raw, and I think this is like right in my timeline where I'm like, you know, I'm listening to like Trapped Under Ice and like just getting into like actual hardcore bands. So when I heard of Venya, I was like, okay. I want to dig deeper into this shit, and I need to like start wearing shirts that aren't like the crazy August Burns Red designs on them. So I remember I bought this, like it was a Venya like long sleeve that had like the shots of them on the back all jumping around or whatever. But it was like my favorite piece of merch for like years before I was
that's
like,
awesome.
I can't wear this medium anymore. But yeah, that's so crazy. And
that's
I
another
think it's
like Minnesota OG band.
Totally. Yeah. And I think
War
like
Prayer talked about covering them for years and just never pulled it out. Never did it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild just like how, you know, like people talk about the Midwest like a lot now, especially with like Knocked Loose and like some like LDB and a lot of those festivals that go on. But yeah, like even before a lot of those things were really in the conversation now, like there were so many bands that just really were ahead of their time and really doing things
absolutely,
like really actively in that. And you know, you brought up War Prayer, and I feel like that's a good segue into like that, because unless there's like any other notable bands that you think are very important, you know, actually before we even hit on that, something that I did want to ask you about is the first thing that you said is you were playing guitar first before doing drums. So what was the switch into like, I want to hit stuff versus like, I want to like hit some strings?
So my parents bought me a guitar when I was very young. That same cousin I talked about that showed me like Tool and System of a Down and all that stuff. He was a guitar player, but also a drummer. He had a drum set. When I was I'm talking like 3 or 4, you know, I'm not doing anything coherent at this point, you know, like I'm just like, but I would like sit down at his drums and like, you know, fuck around for a second. And so like I got older and I did that a few more times, but really didn't notice that I liked playing drums until about that same time period. I joined Winter Drum. I had played guitar, and then I auditioned for drums for percussion for like band in 6th grade, and got denied because I didn't have piano. 2 years of piano or whatever was like required to play percussion. So I played clarinet for a couple of years, and then I joined Drumline and just like it was like, no, like I want to do that. I wanted to play snare in Drumline. That was like the big thing.
Yeah.
So I just like, I remember taking the summer between 7th and 8th grade. All I did was like teach myself how to play snare, teach myself technique essentially, and like practice. Ended up getting on snare that next year. Ended up like convincing my band director to switch me to percussion. And then pretty much from there, it was just like, okay, now I have a drum kit at my disposal. And I started listening to metal music, and I was like, or hardcore, not even hardcore at this point. Like you mentioned at that point when you were at Sunshine, you were listening to like Trapped Under Ice and stuff. And like, that was still like 3 or 4 years out for me.
Right.
Like I was still just getting into metalcore and Christcore and like that kind of thing. So like that fest was the first time I had ever seen a metalcore band.
Right. Okay.
Ever.
Yeah.
So like, it was like, that was still a couple years out for me. And I remember a big one being A Day to Remember. Like I got into that band super hard, and still like, that band's awesome. Like,
yeah.
I haven't listened to any of their new material, so don't quote me on that. But those OG records are phenomenal still to this day. They are timeless.
I
they hold up.
I totally agree. I am in the same boat where it's like, yeah, I haven't maybe listened to the last 2 records as far as like sitting down and putting them on.
Yeah.
But I think anything off of the second or the third record, I'm blanking on the names right now. Like those are some of the, I think that's a true showcase of how great songwriters that entire band is.
Absolutely.
And like, it's kind of a weird thing. Like a band will like write those killer records early in their career. And like, granted, you know, Terror just put out a really killer new record that has
so good,
so many great songs on it. But like,
it's so good.
Theoretically, that record could tank, but Terror could still exist as a band and only place off of like Keepers of the Faith and anything before that. So,
and they'd be just fine.
Yes. So I think A Day to Remember is kind of in that same boat where it's like
absolutely
undeniable as far as what their sound was and how they did it and how they like killed it. But yes.
Yeah. So it was like basically having, at this point now, I'm like able to go to the band room in my high school and sit down at the drums and just play. Just because like, you know, I was able to like weasel my way into being a percussionist out of clarinet. And someone at one point donated a double kick pedal. I don't remember how nor who, but it just kind of showed up one day. And I remember taking that thing and putting it in. There's like a practice kit in a back room. And I remember taking that thing and hiding it. I was like, I'm going to use this. I'm going to learn how to like do this. And it was a lot of A Day to Remember just because like, it's a like simple, you know,
it's not this calling double
patterns.
Kick, you know,
yeah, exactly. It's like super simple kick patterns. If you go to YouTube and like type in my name and drum cover, there will be a video of me in that room on that kit covering Downfall of Us All because it's on a YouTube account that I can't access, so I can't delete the video. It's bad. I'm wearing remember the Great Commission?
The Great Commission. That was the band that was in the Taylor Swift music video, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's hilarious. That band.
I'm wearing a Great Commission basketball jersey in that video.
A basketball jersey? Dude.
A basketball jersey.
Oh my gosh. You're painting the picture beautifully.
It's rough. It's so bad. I didn't play the song right. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, I was watching like Luke Holland and like that kind of shit. And I was like, I want to make drum covers on YouTube. And like, it was really just like, I spent a lot of time in that room teaching myself how to play songs.
Right.
I had taken drum lessons, but not in that realm. It was all for marching. Like that was the focus. Marching was the focus.
Which do you think kind of like you're happy that you had that time of like the more technical side of things?
Yeah.
That definitely was something as someone on the guitar side, I just like burned through so many guitar teachers because I just was like, teach me how to make this weird song that I'm hearing at this Slipknot like song. And they're like, well, do you want to do your scales? And I'm like, no. But like nowadays I'm like, I kind of wish I had like more of that background, but it sounds like you're like,
I did the technical stuff first and then kind of just applied it all to the drum kit.
Right.
And I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, I don't know. Just like I don't even remember how we got to where we're talking about right now.
Yeah. Well, I like two things. One is the fact that there was a subtle moment where you could have been gate kept completely out of drums because you didn't have that piano experience or whatever bullshit.
Absolutely.
But you were so driven to like, no, I'm going to figure out my way into this. And then when you were there.
So it was a point I realized it was like the passion was drums and not just music. It was like what I want to do is play drums. And like I still play guitar. It's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
I have a guitar. It's like at my mom's house. You know, it's so rare that I play.
Right.
There's a Well God Sleep show we played. I want to say it was like December, and for the last song, we all like switched instruments. So like I played guitar, Eli played drums, bass, or Jake played Jake did vocals, Blake played guitar or bass. No, I just said I fucked that all up.
You all put it in a Jenga
we all
thing and like shake it around and did
literally,
that.
Yeah, Yahtzee.
Yeah, Yahtzee. Yeah.
But like, so like I'm still like able to play, but it was very apparent that like drums was a passion. It's like not just music, like music is a passion, whether it's playing it or listening to it. But it was like what I want to do is play drums. You know, I just like became infatuated.
Yeah.
And like that eventually turned into finding people who liked the same kind of music that I did, which was goddamn near impossible in the town I grew up in.
Right.
A lot of ridicule for the music I listened to. Like I grew up in a super small town. I grew up in a town of 2,500 people in like rural Minnesota. Okay. So like it's farm town area. Like, so I was very big on like the internet. MySpace was a little before my time, not to date myself in a young way, but in the reverse way. But like MySpace was a little before my time, but it was like Facebook was the new thing. YouTube was booming. So it was just like suggested video after suggested video after suggested video. Like I got immersed in like the scene culture, and like nobody else where I was from had any idea what that was. So like I'd show up to school wearing like purple skinny jeans, and it was like people who were going home and like farming with their dads kind of shit, which is
like,
awesome.
Those
like,
are terrible jeans to farm in, boy.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah. It was, so like a lot of ridicule in like that kind of sense. And like, but I was just like, no, this is like what I think is cool. Like, this is what I want to do. This is what the people who I think are cool are doing.
Right. Yeah, that's a very similar, I know that I'm a few years older than you, but I think that was a very similar track record for me, where it's like there was maybe one or two kids that like we all like the same music, generally speaking. Like maybe one kid was a little bit more into like the Children of Bodoms or like the really crazy stuff, and then I'm like we're kind of in between. And I remember we would get together for weekend after weekend and we would like jam, and I had this like just deep desire of like actually like playing music, and like because I would watch the A Day to Remember DVDs, the Parkway Drive DVDs,
the A Day to Remember for Those Who Have Heart DVD.
Yes.
I watched it every single night as I fell asleep for like a year. I swear to God. Like all I wanted to do when I was 12 and 13 was like hop in a van and do the thing. And like very blessed that I've gotten to do that now as, as an adult.
But like, I think even there are other people that could watch those same documentaries and it just doesn't resonate with them. They're like,
they just like doesn't make them feel that thing.
Yeah. They might like the music and they're like, yeah, that's cool. But it's like when push comes to shove, it's like, well, I don't know. And then it becomes like, I felt like I was always against, like, I just never had the right people around. And I think when you're at that age, you just need to like find that one band to get you in, because even if that band breaks up, there's always like, well, you made new connections with all these new people that you played shows with, and then they ask you to join your band, and then it just like it's game over at that point.
Just blossoms.
Yeah,
I remember. So like, where I grew up, there's like nothing. There's a couple of people, like I said, my one friend who showed me, that gave me her stack of CDs. Like she got it 100%. And there was like a couple of people we knew, but she was like 4 years older than me. So like anybody my age for sure, like wasn't about it. And like, so I didn't really know many people that were into that. And then went to Sunshine that first year, saw a band from North Dakota, a name drop here, called If I Ran the Zoo.
I've heard that band before.
They became a band called Glass Houses.
Okay.
Which is like, they're still a band, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I don't know. Regardless, that was like the first local band I had ever seen. I mean, those were like the first, I had seen like live music with my parents, but I had not seen like metalcore bands until that like week.
Right.
I saw that band and then ended up like meeting them and like still thinking it was the coolest thing ever. And like looking back, I'm like, oh my God, like I've done all of that at this point. You know what I mean? Like they were just like some dudes,
right?
You know, and like I'm friends with like a lot of them still to this day, which is super cool. And that's another thing to touch on is like some of these friendships, like through this kind of thing, endless, like lifelong. That's awesome.
Yes. If I can quickly, like, I think that's something that anyone in their, you know, when hardcore becomes just like something you live and breathe, and it's no longer like this thing that's like, oh, I can't wait. Like, you know, it's just like, I'm going to the show this weekend. Like, I'm not going with anyone specifically. I'm just going to the show because that's what I do.
Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to this fest, or my band is doing this. Like, hardcore does become mundane to a degree because it's just like, oh, it's just a part of who I am. But then you kind of forget that there are those kids who are like 17, 18, 19, 20, where it's their first show experience. And it's like them talking to you for 5 minutes about whatever. And they like listen to your band, or maybe like they listen to your podcast.
I think it's like the coolest thing ever.
They think it's the coolest thing ever. So it's like that's something that I always remind myself of, like giving people the time of day versus trying to like shrug people off or like, oh, that kid was kind of weird.
Of course.
But it's like we all were like that ultra weird kid at the local show.
100%. I was the kid asking the local bands for signatures on the t-shirt I just bought. Like, you know what I mean? And like, totally. So like, yeah, I just like, I saw that band. They were like, oh, where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I'm from this little town called Foley, Minnesota. And they're like, where's that? I'm like, oh, it's right by St. Cloud, Minnesota. And they're like, oh, we're playing not too far from there in a couple months or in a month or whatever. And like, I was like, oh, like, we were like, no way. It's so cool. Like, and we ended up finding the event page, ended up going. And I was at this tiny little venue called the Choir House. It was in Malacca, Minnesota. It was basically like a trailer, like a double wide mobile home trailer that was hollowed out. And it was like a venue on this old lady's property. A buddy of mine ran it. At this point, not a buddy, but now many years later, obviously, a buddy of mine, like he ran it. And like, I remember so vividly pulling up and like didn't know a single person. It was like me and my one friend. We pulled up, didn't know a single person. We just like wanted to see this band. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting outside and like seeing a bunch of dudes pull up in a van and like hop out and pull out skateboards, and all their gear and stuff is in the back. They like pull out skateboards and just like started skating. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. Mm. I want to travel. I want to play music. I want to skateboard like with my friends. Like, I don't know, like that specific memory is so vivid. And like that, I remember I think I was 13. I was like, I want to tour. I want to play in bands and tour. But like, obviously when you're 13 years old, you can't do that. But that was kind of when I really decided, it was like, I want to take this seriously. I like really want to get good at this. I want to play in bands, and I want to work my way up to being in a place where I can tour.
Got you.
And it was pivotal, 100% pivotal. Like I had never experienced, I met that day, I met people that I'm still friends with today. Just like, and it's crazy. It was 13 years ago, like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. You're painting, your storytelling capabilities is so crystal clear, and it's really, really cool to hear how
like still skateboards. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Well, really, pull those skateboards out, and I'm like, I want to do that.
Well, really, it goes so down to you going to that fest and then seeing a local band and them giving you 5 or 10 minutes to like learn, to give a shit about who you are, and then be like, oh yeah, there's this show happening, and then clearly, the serendipity of that is like so huge, because it could have just easily been like, oh yeah, thanks for coming, or thanks, whatever, and then just moving on. But
but they like took the time and like totally, and like I don't know. I've always tried to do this, and I'm so guilty of, especially like, I don't know. I've been playing shows for a long time, and I'm like not any longer than anyone else realistically of my age that has been doing it. It's like I'm not trying to be like, oh, I've been doing it forever, but a long time. And I'm definitely like, sometimes I play a show and I'm like, the last thing I want to do is be at a show.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, there's another topic to touch on is like getting burnt out on hardcore. Like, because I think that's okay sometimes. And I've definitely been there recently a little bit, but you know, not taking the time to be present and be 100% there. You know, it's just like, I'm definitely guilty of doing.
Yeah.
Showing up, playing the show, being like, okay, well, I want to go home. Like, sorry.
Or like, I'll only talk to the homies that I know.
Homies.
Or, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%. Even if you're
like, to give you some credit, everybody listening to this podcast and the person speaking into this microphone specifically have all done that. They've all like done a show just to kind of like do it. Just and maybe not think a little more big picture of like, like who's that person that I've never seen at the show before standing by themselves? Maybe I should go say hi.
Absolutely.
To them. Or like, who's this kid who's like busting out all these moves that I've never seen before?
Totally, literally, like.
It goes way longer than you realize, because in the moment it's like, you know, like, was that a awkward conversation? Like you start to play the mind games, but then it's moments like this where like people are coming on the podcast like, no, this conversation or this person or this show or this fest like is the reason that I'm here today. So like I think being able to, you know, it's been a pleasure of mine to be able to like meet certain people as this podcast levels up, and then I can like properly give my roses back to those people, be like,
absolutely,
thanks for doing this band, because like we wouldn't be sitting here on the Zoom call to talk about it. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit. So you know, we've laid so much of the groundwork. When did like actual like playing in bands on like a serious level start to actually make its way? And was War Prayer one of those first ones, or were there ones before that?
No, there was a few prior. War Prayer was like the first band that really actually got any sort of traction. And I don't even think that we had that much traction, but like there was a minute where like we were doing some cool shit. I mean, we played Canada a couple times, and like for us, like that was insane. That was huge. We made it to both coasts, like from being a band from the Midwest. That's another thing, like being a band from the Midwest, the actual Midwest,
right?
Not the Southeast Midwest. I love all of you LDB people, not part of the Midwest. I'm saying it. Kentucky is not the Midwest.
Oh.
We're from the dead ass center of the country. You know what I mean? So it's like
these opinions are
like
Alex's
I'm not
Alex's
like
below.
I was gonna say, no, I'm like you know what I mean? It's like those states are so much closer to the East Coast, Florida, Chicago. There's so much more in those areas than we have up here.
Yes.
Bands like when they're making routing tours, they hardly even look at Minneapolis because it's got to go all the way up and then all the way back down.
Yeah.
There's nothing near us. So being a band from Minnesota, the Midwest, is really fucking hard. And you have to work 10 times as hard as anybody else does.
Right.
And it's like, that's why, like, I mean, it's so rare that, and this is definitely like not a wah situation. It's just like, that's how it's always been. I mean, like, even like bands that were huge, like Vania, you know what I mean? They were never even that big.
Right.
It's just like, I can't think of a band that's been as big as that since then from here.
Yeah.
Like
even on honestly, the other,
genuinely.
Yeah. Like even a band like Disembodied is to some huge
20 years ago,
but is still like not
that was
as
the one
huge.
Before Vania.
Yes. Yeah.
So like, it's just really, really hard. And like, so like, I'm born, raised central Minnesota. Like I've lived in Minnesota my whole life, and like all of my bands have been based here. And it's just like, it's just really hard to like, I don't know. Something for us that's always like weird is like, you can live in, you know, certain parts of the country, get big tours all the time that have locals. And it's really, you know, really clutch to be like, oh, like these bands are coming through, local on it. There's already all these people there. You know, it's like, it's super easy to build up that way. Whereas like from us, it's like, we don't really have that.
Right.
When we get big shows, and I love these. This is like, I mean, like the Acacia Strain, when they did their like 2-day in each city tour, I went to both days. Like, I love that shit. I do. But it's like, those are some of the last cool shows we've had here. And that was almost 7 months ago. Like,
yeah, right.
So it's like that kind of, and no locals get to play those shows.
Right.
When Knocked Loose plays, locals don't get to play, you know, and like, and then we don't get some of those like mid-range, higher, upper mid-range touring hardcore bands. Like,
right.
It's very rare that they come through.
Yeah.
And we just had Raw Brigade, and that was awesome. I wasn't able to go, unfortunately, but like every once in a while we get some really dope shit. But like, we have to like work so much harder to get outside of our little bubble that is here that we can't control. That is a bubble, because it's just the way touring routing works. And I get it. I totally get it.
I think,
I get it.
I think something that I have really applied to my personal life, but I think also applies to hardcore in general, is like, you don't choose the cards that are dealt to you, but you get to choose how you play with them. So like, you know, if you live in like Oklahoma or Saskatchewan or like a random thing, it's not gonna be like the most bumping compared to
it's not living
New
in
York
LA
or Florida or you know, but you know, even going back like a few years ago, like before all the bands from the Bay that were really popping, it was only people were only talking about Southern California. No one was giving a fuck about Northern California. And all it takes, I think, is like a couple like really awesome bands to like really like break out, and like a ton of people kind of rush to it, and then it takes the community to actually build it up. And like, you know, I haven't been to Minneapolis many times, but when I went to Snow and Flurry, like I met so many like just like amazing people that like love this shit and like
absolutely
would like mosh to every single band. Like the locals that were playing that festival that year were just like blowing me away. So it's like, I think like just Minnesota as a whole state-wise is like, and you know, true Midwest, if we want to call it that.
I know,
like,
I feel so bad. I didn't mean to call shots like that.
Yeah. Please direct all DMs to Alex, not to me.
No, stop.
No. It's all, you know, we love all like, anyone who identifies as being Midwest.
You know what I mean?
But yeah, like I do think that you appreciate more of what actually comes your way, because Western Canada is very much the same way, where a lot of people, when they come to North American or Canadian routing, they'll just go to Toronto and back, or just go up to Vancouver and back. No one's going to like go all the way through the prairies and do the whole thing.
That's exact. Same thing with Minneapolis.
Yeah.
People you know, people within the scene complain about it all the time. Everybody complains about it. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to get cool bands here. And like, it's a bummer, but I get it. I also get it. As someone who has toured a good amount, like I get it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like understanding it. And is there any way, as far as like cool bands doing a local fest, like what are the ways that we can actually like have people come here from bigger scenes, have a good experience, and then go back to, you know, tell their friends about it. I'm going to reference a very early podcast with a good friend of mine from Calgary here. His name is Evan McIsaac. He grew up in Montreal, or sorry, he he grew up on the East Coast, but then lived in Ottawa for a very long time.
Okay.
And it was like him and his group of friends were so dedicated when any tour would go Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, that they were like, we are going to beat the absolute ever living shit out of each other and like show these bands a great time, buy all of their merch. Like, we don't have to love these bands, but we're going to just overdo it. So
Absolutely.
these
Oversell
bands
it almost.
are like, yo, the Ottawa date was like actually better than Toronto. Like, we need to go back there, and we need to tell our friends to go back there. So, you know, in all of this effort that we're talking about isn't just off of one show or one festival a year. Like, it's a multi-year long adventure and journey to like actually like build a strong and sustainable scene.
Absolutely. And that's something that we've all worked on here for a long time. Even like, I don't know. I've been a little more distant from the hardcore scene lately, just for personal reasons. I've just been busy with career things. But that being said, I've been doing it for almost a decade. Like, so like it's always been a thing we've been trying to do here is like when we do get to have cool bands come through, we try our best to, you know, mosh hard and buy merch and show them that like, and make connections and say, hey, next time you're in town, hit up this guy because he'll throw you a real show instead of the guy you went through that booked you a bunk show, or like, or just, you know, or hey, come stay with me, like make, you know, like that kind of, and like, yeah, it's tough, but it's like bands do remember that kind of stuff, you know. Like I briefly just mentioned we had Raw Brigade here, I believe last week, and I wasn't able to go, but the show looked absolutely bonkers.
Yeah,
it looked.
I did see stories. I was like,
so sick. Yeah, that like that shows like that people remember, and you know they post those pictures, and it's like people go, like maybe Minneapolis isn't that bad. Maybe Minneapolis is worth driving from Chicago to Minneapolis than to Des Moines or Denver. And it's like, that is geographically, it sucks because it physically doesn't make much sense for most routing. And that's where we get swamped. But if it's worth it, it's worth it. And we do our best to try to make sure that bands feel like it's worth it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, you know, like this conversation is something we get on for hours and hours, because there's always the thing where it's like, well, if bands aren't playing these like random little like, you know, towns throughout Western Canada, and it's like the one hardcore show that they've had in like 3 years, maybe it will be sick. Maybe there like will be the most amount of merch that we've ever sold. You know, like there's all those kind of things at play. But I think, you know, I think one of my favorite quotes that's been said on this podcast is from Jem from Speed. And he was like, hardcore is something that you have to fight for. And I think when you come up in an underdog scene that doesn't have decades upon decades of history of like you know, legendary bands like from New York or from Los Angeles, like you really need to like you are the early years. Like you are the early years of like, you know, building things up. So it's like Minneapolis, Western Canada, wherever you live is like the next great scene that people are talking about in 2025, 2020, you know, 6, whatever it is. You brought up your career stuff, and I feel like being an hour into this podcast, I feel like it's time to talk about bevs and brewing.
It's bev time.
It's bev time.
It's bev time. All right, wait. All right, I got one more bev.
Oh, damn. You're on bev 3. Cape Cod.
I've been awake since very early this morning. It was a very long day.
I feel that.
We got a dry hopped Pilsner from Treehouse Brewing. Another one of the best in the country. Very lucky to have this in my possession. Saved it for this.
So let's start from the beginning when it comes to all, you know, like a lot of people.
Because there's for sure crossover with like, I'm so sorry, that was so loud.
No. all the Rip to all the headphone users. I'm just kidding. It's pretty tolerable. So yeah, like when did the original idea of just like beverage culture happen for you? Because for me, it's funny that growing up I was such like a water, like milk and juice kid, and like never drank soda or like, and coffee even took a little while to get into the picture for me. But I think once the idea for me of having cool sparkling waters and just different little things and having the cool can in my hand to associate it, that's when it was game over for me. But what was the story for you when it came to all this?
It was kind of similar, like that, like being like, oh, like it's like a cool can, like this is a cool sparkling water, or a cool juice or whatever. It really took when I started touring. I remember just like I could probably scroll back to 2016, 2015 and prior, and there's like pictures of me, like they're like pictures of my hand with a bev in my hand in the van, like that kind of thing, like whether it was, you know, an Arizona tea or a Shaq soda, or, you know, like anything. And like a lot of it had to do with labels on said bevs, and just like, I don't know, like I grew up a very picky eater, but I will try anything in a beverage, and I don't know why that is. Yeah, it is a little interesting.
I don't want to chew this, but as far as whatever this tastes, it's all going down the same way. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a texture.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah. So I always have been a big bev guy. Always have 3 different a sparkling water, a regular water, caffeinated beverage, and the time being a beer, you know, like, but yeah, it just like always been a bev guy. I got into beer like super heavy over like OG initial quarantine. There's a big, as you know, I know, there's like beer, Instagram and beer are like best friends. So like I got into it kind of through that, just like these crazy fruited sours and stuff from just like through Instagram, and just like, I don't even know how to describe it. Just like this community, it's almost a community.
Well, yeah, it very much is.
Just like, and like, so I got into it through that mostly. It was like, as far as like making it a career, as in the brewing industry, was like through Instagram for sure. And like I'd already been very into bevs, and like I'd see a bev I had never seen in a gas station in a different state on tour. I was grabbing it and trying it, taking a picture of it.
Right.
And like, it was kind of stuff like that. And then I started to realize that like, oh, like these brewers they're brewing a sour beer and putting 6 different fruits in it. And like, it's like, oh, I want to try that. That sounds really good. And like, so I definitely got into it like through that. And like the can art and the promotional pictures, and just like, and then I was like, oh, well, like I was ordering beer, like there's an app called Tavour. I'm pretty sure it's just a States thing. But
yeah, is that just for ordering like alcohol?
It's for specifically craft beer.
Oh, okay. It's called Tavour.
So like Tavour,
oh,
like
okay.
Tavour.
Okay.
It's like an app, and you like, I mean, you can get like beers from some of the best breweries in the country. Oh my god, my phone's vibrating. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're all good.
Oh my god, I feel so bad. I just moved not that long ago. My computer's not set up yet. It's a whole thing.
Dude, it's all good. Thing. You're killing this.
But yeah, no, like always been a bev guy.
Tavour.
Even like growing up, bev guy. Tavour, I found this app like over quarantine, and I was able to get beers from just like all across the country, sometimes outside of the country. Like every once in a while, there's stuff from like Belgium and that kind of thing on there, and you like just like order singles of stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I spent.
You're not
I was
committed
unemployed.
to like a 4-pack or a 6-pack or anything.
Exactly. Even though the single might be $9, I only have to buy one.
Right.
And I was getting like a good amount of money from unemployment. I was working at the airport, got laid off, was at home all summer on unemployment with like all the extra benefits. So like I had a bunch of money. I spent a lot of that on like trying different beers and really just kind of like expanded my palate and realized that like, oh, like I'm drinking all these beers that are just like sour beers coated in fruit, which are awesome. But I also started to like, I don't know what I'm trying to think of. Like expand my palate and like try beers that were, you know, hoppy and like pilsners and all that kind of stuff. And I just really kind of like found a passion for the craft of beer. And just kind of realized that was something that I wanted to do. And I know you remember like Rot ended up doing a collab or two with the brewery I used to work for. Because a friend of mine was brewing there that I had known through hardcore music. And like, there's a huge hardcore metal to brewer crossover, which is crazy. I meet more people every single day that are like, yo, yeah, I love this band or that band. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, I've been drinking your beer for years. Like, this brewery, Lua, they had me and Jake the other day at Rot practice shared a beer that was called Boom Slang. It's a Kublai Khan song.
Damn. And like a recent. So they're like, you know, listening to the new shit. That's crazy.
Yeah. Shouts out Lua. Shouts out Zach. They had a beer called
Boom Slang.
Straight up. Shouts out Kublai Khan. They had a beer called, it was a collab with like the brother brewery of my brewery. It was called Guided by the Moon.
Knocked Loose.
A little Knocked Loose reference.
Interesting.
A little Knocked Loose Bev. They had a Knocked Loose. If you're listening, don't copyright strike them. I'm sorry. They're awesome.
Isaac, please.
Isaac, yeah. Please. And then
it's all for the
they had a beer called Kingmaker. And that was like another. I don't know if you remember the band Kingmaker at all.
Oh, Kingmaker. I thought you said Kegmaker. And I was like, well, that is what a brewer does.
That makes sense.
But Kingmaker, yeah, okay.
Kingmaker.
I feel like there's the top 5 professions of what hardcore people are most likely to do. Brewers is maybe one of those. I feel like doing that, working, being a barber is up there.
Yeah, I was gonna say barber,
tattoo artist,
barista,
and then I would say insurance. I don't know.
I don't either. That's 4 solid ones.
4 solid ones.
But like,
I just didn't want to say something like vegan restaurant or whatever, because that's partially true. But I don't know.
Cook though, like
Cook is probably
food
there.
World, like anything in the food world.
But shout out to all the hardcore insurance brokers out there.
We
see you.
We see you. We thank you.
So
a weird.
Just
a quick note. The lead brewer at my brewery was taught to brew, essentially, mostly taught by the current bass player of CU Space Cowboy.
Oh.
Which is someone I don't know personally. Not a name drop. I do not know this person. But I walked in one day and like he was playing CU Space Cowboy and I was like, yo, is this? And he was like, yeah, dude. The guy that plays bass for them taught me how to brew. And I'm just like, what the fuck? You know, like it's such a small world.
Yeah.
Like,
I was just in Toronto shooting a fest, and I filmed this band that was from Oakland, California. So I was like, "Oh, do you know Timeless Coffee?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, our drummer's roommate or like some kind of weird connection like works there." So like Timeless, for those that don't know, is like a really awesome all vegan coffee roastery and bakery. So, but you know, Joseph from Tsunami works there. One of the dudes from Spy works there.
Totally.
Just so many hardcore connections to that spot specifically. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, so
it's
that whole thing where it's like you could walk in and then like there's stories of just like Ian MacKaye like just walking in to be like, I'm gonna get some coffee. Just like random shit like that.
That's crazy. That's so sick.
Yeah.
Like,
so
it's just. It's dope.
So all these, you do these the collabs were essentially the nail that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. So
in a way.
My roommate at the time, which is Jake Watson, bass player of Rot, guitar player, Well God Sleeps, best friend, bass player, roommate, roommate no longer, but the other two things still hold up.
Yeah. Yes.
He ended up. Like we both worked at the airport together. We got hired back after COVID. We were both huge beer nerds at this time. And he ended up messaging my homie, Chris, who was working at the brewery that we collabed with, Disgruntled. And it was just like, yo, is the brewery hiring? You probably get this all the time. Is the brewery hiring? And he was like, actually, I never get that. And yes, we need, yeah. And
actually,
we need
the
a sales rep
opposite, and yes.
We are. We need a sales rep for your area, the Twin Cities area. The brewery is based like up north, so it's like 3 hours away. And so essentially, he ended up getting the job. It was part-time. He ended up switching to full-time. He quit the airport, was full-time doing sales for the brewery, which is awesome. Basically pitched, hey, do you want to collab with my band? And the head brewer was just like, fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it.
Right.
So they came up with an idea. All of us ended up going up and like essentially brewing the beer with them that day. And just like being in that environment and like seeing it all and like helping and like really solidified. I was like, yeah, this is like really, really cool. This is something I really actually am interested in. I want to learn. I want to do this. I want to figure out how to do this.
Right.
And
so what, like, at what point was it where you're like, doing the that whole thing and you're like, yep, this is my shit. Yeah.
Straight up. Exactly. And I was like, this is awesome. This is so cool. Like I've been working a job that I didn't love, but I didn't hate. Came back after COVID. It was so much worse. Hated it. So not so. Airport after COVID sucked.
Airport right now, summer of 2022 is god awful.
Still bad.
Yes.
Yep.
Especially going through a huge airport like Pearson. Like I specifically
even is huge.
I specifically did not check a bag because I just expected it to get lost. So just had the heaviest backpack ever, but I have all my shit. But
it's cool. Yeah, you got all your shit. That's what matters.
Yeah. So
but basically, I was just like into this whole scene, this whole thing, like, and just needed a change. I ended up talking to the head brewer of that brewery on Snapchat one day, just like the most casual. I always tell that.
It's very casual
on Snapchat because it was so casual. It was just like I literally dropped. I was like, "Yo, I'd love to learn how to brew someday," and he was like, "Yo, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I think it'd be really cool. Like that's something I would like to pursue." And he was like, "If you're willing to make the trip from Minneapolis to here, I will teach you how to brew. I'll give you a job right now on the spot." And 3 hours later, he was like, I just talked to my owner. She said it's cool. If you're serious about this, the job is yours. I'll see you Monday morning. And I was just like, fuck it. I guess I'm driving 3 hours to work on Monday morning. Like, I was just like in over my head, 100%. But yeah, I was like driving up 3 hours Monday morning, staying Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, driving home Wednesday night. Just because I wanted to learn how to brew that bad.
Right.
And I do not regret that for a second.
Right. I feel like that decision making is a very similar thing for people doing what we do musically, where it's like,
absolutely.
Do you
don't
want
have
to
much
come
time to figure it out
and drive 11 hours to play one show? It's with this band, and yeah, fuck it, let's do it.
Yep, fuck it, let's do it. Are we getting paid? I don't know. I don't care. We're on our way already. So
yeah.
Like, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
100%. Just like if you want it, go and fucking take it.
Totally.
And, like, it was
like
definitely
chase
that
those
kind of mindset.
I'm a firm believer in like chasing curiosities. Like,
absolutely.
There's always gonna be times where you're like, oh, like there's a leap that I need to take with whether it's like a professional thing or with a band or a relationship, whatever it is. But I feel like you will never know. Like there something that was always expressed to me, it's like, even if you say yes to something and you do it and it like sucks, you could always just like bounce and then just go back to what you were doing before or find another thing. Like, life is kind of about just swinging through the vines of life and just grabbing whatever's there. And that vine for you was like, I see that and I gotta fucking swing all the way here. And I can't really, you can go back, like, you know, using this analogy, but like, if you don't chase that, then you'll never know. And you were like, I'm driving 3 hours on Monday.
Yeah, I was like, I don't care. It affected a lot of my life, positively and negatively, honestly. But it like where I'm at now, I don't regret it for a second. I would not be here if I hadn't taken that step. Like I quit my job to work part-time. I quit my like solid union, well-paying job. Well paying. All right. I won't go that far.
Yeah.
But decently
stable-ish
income. Stable job for sure. 100% stable income to go work at a brewery because I was so sick of the mundane and I was just like, I want to do something I'm passionate about. And things went down with that brewery that were weird, but like still love. And then I ended up where I'm at now, which is where I feel is a very, very prestigious spot. And I get to do a lot of cool stuff. And
I'm guessing you don't need to drive 3 hours to get to that spot, which is obviously
12 minutes.
12 minutes is way better.
12 minutes. It's in St. Paul. So.
Yeah. 3 hours. 3 hours in like short stints, as far as like, you know, if you're doing it for a few months, is probably doable. It's almost the same. Where I talk about, and I can say this as someone that did long distance dating for a long time, is like long distance dating is something you can do, but it's not something you should try to do forever. Totally. Because it's not set up that way. So it's like a 3 hour commute to work is somewhat doable, but figuring out something and to me, it sounds like without taking that leap to like get things started for that, you wouldn't be able to be where you're at now.
No, absolutely not. I would not be where I'm at right now if I had not taken that. I remember talking on the parents with my phone, talking on the phone with my parents about like taking that step and just being like, it's a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. And my parents were like, well, it's not really a leap of faith. If it's like, you know, if it's something you're really passionate about, it sounds like it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like you're just throwing your cards to the wind, you know, it's like, I was like, well, it's 3 hours away. It's like, it was really tough though. And like, as much touring and traveling as I had done could not prepare me for just being gone consistently 3 days a week for almost a year.
Right.
And it was like, I'm away from my girlfriend, my dog, my friends. Like I get off work and I can't go hang out with my friends. I'm just kind of like stuck in this tiny town in up north Minnesota. And like, it was tough. It was really tough. Mm-hmm. And like, there'd be shows going on. And I'm like, if I worked any other job, I'd be getting off work right now and I could go to the show.
Right.
But I'm 3 hours away. I have to work at 5 a.m. the next morning. It was a lot, but I got a lot of information, an insane amount of connections. And it really allowed me to get the experience I needed to get to where I'm today, which is somewhere I'm very proud of. And I hold very highly, I don't know. What am I trying to say?
You don't take that
I'm honored. Yeah, exactly. I'm honored to have the position that I have at this specific spot. And if it weren't for those things, I wouldn't be here. So.
I think like something that I just want to add in is like, I think a lot of people, and I get into this weird, like, not imposter syndrome is not the right word, but this whole like mindset of like, you know, once you do hardcore and it becomes so normalized and it's just a part of our everyday culture, that doesn't mean that like taking a year off or like maybe shifting focuses where you're doing a little bit more like career stuff or like, you know, like, hey, I just had a kid, like that's becoming a new thing.
Yeah.
Like life goes on and hardcore goes on as well. And sometimes those things have perfect marriage between one another and sometimes they totally clash. So, you know, I'm
so sweaty.
Dude, you're an absolute trooper for doing this whole podcast.
Dude.
It's kind of a vibe.
We're chilling.
It's like the more that people watch this, the more like into it that you clearly are.
Dude, it's awesome. But yeah, absolutely. Like it's something I really like made a point, like, cause I was thinking today, I'm like, well, like, what do I want to touch on? Like, it's like the amount my life has changed since the first time we tried to schedule this to now is just like huge. It's insane. And like something I really want to touch on is like, I have taken a bit of a step back from hardcore recently. And like, I'm still playing shows. Rot is still very active. Like we're still doing stuff. Still recording music, still playing shows, still planning tours, all of it. But I've had to take a little bit of a step back and be like, okay, well, I have a career that I really care about, a career that I want to do for a long time. I'm at a place that I'm not willing to jeopardize leaving for the first time in my life. I'm not working a job where I'm like, oh, I can't tour later. Like, for the first time in my entire life.
Right.
I'm like, if they're like, no, you can't go on this tour, I'm like, okay. Like, so, all right. Can I do part of it? You know, like, but I just like, it's been a battle. It's been really hard to come to that, like, to come to terms with that.
Right.
And like, it's something that hardcore has been, and even not even just hardcore, like playing music, touring, but very specifically for me, at least, hardcore has been such a big part of my life. And it's such a big part of who I am. And like, I don't have any less passion for that, but I've needed to take some time and like I've had to shift focus elsewhere. Doing brewing it's a lot of numbers and knowledge and information and stuff. And it's like really hard it's a lot. So like, I've really just had to kind of step back and be like, okay, I need to like put my focus here for now and like get my feet grounded in this realm and maybe only play in one band as opposed to 5. Like, you know, it's like, as much as I've enjoyed every second of all of that, and I'm so thankful for all of it, it's just like, I'm at a point where it's like, well, all right, well, maybe taking a step back is not the worst thing. Like,
yeah,
I think that's okay.
And maybe if I could encourage you, I don't think it's a step back. I just think it's a side step. I think it's just like, instead of like, oh, now I'm going back and like, we're not going all the way back to the fucking Attack music video. Yeah, that's a true step back. But like, it's just, it's like, there are things where, it's like, I think I've felt a similar thing. I think especially in the last year, I felt pulled intensely in 3 separate directions. And a lot of that was like scoped exposure, Endgame getting kind of the traction that we're getting, as well as I had a really high demanding career job. And I felt like, how do I manage all of this while still being a person that has dogs and a partner and responsibilities and all these things? And I had like very long conversations with a lot of different people about like, you know, because I find identity in all these different aspects. But I think something that I had to really come to terms with is like, I don't have more than 100% energy in the day. I only have 100%, and I have to choose where that is going. So like, I've been making constant efforts where like, you know, things with my job kind of like didn't pan out. So that's kind of like outside, but like, as far as what I do professionally, that still is important to me and what it matters a lot. Like things with how I look at Scoped, like I used to be like so avidly just trying to like travel and like film as many like out of Canada fests that I could. And I honestly think that after, you know, we're doing Scope 5-year and then Hold Your Ground Fest, and then after that, I'm kind of going to leave it in case someone approaches me with an opportunity versus me trying to chase after it, and like kind of focus more on like the podcast and like some of those things, because that's something that's a little bit easier. I can just do from here. I don't have to like pull so much out of my energy to be able to do that. And then the rest of like the bulk of that like free time energy is just going into my band that is clearly doing things. So I think it's totally normal to be able to like take a pause and realize, oh shit, like I'm getting a little over my, you know, over the handlebars here. Like I need to reassess a couple of things. And like you as a person, I've always known you to be in like 5 bands, just like playing ridiculously. And now it seems like, you know, you're playing in like 1, maybe 2 bands. You know, having a semi-active, you know, like, you know, Rot's still doing stuff, but it's not like we're
not touring 6 months a year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, been there, done that. It was great. I've loved that. But I've like, back then I had no idea that I was going to end up in a career that I enjoyed. Or, you know, it's like, so it's just like, it's been a weird, kind of, as I mentioned, like coming to terms with like, it was definitely a big internal battle with like, being like, well, like if I like sidestep, as you said, not necessarily step back, but like sidestep and like say, okay, like, hey, the end goal's always the same. But like I need to like sidestep, focus on this thing right now because that's what's important right now. It's like, ideally hardcore is always going to be there. That's like the kind of the whole thing is like, we're all collectively trying to make this thing that is forever going to exist. Mm-hmm. If I take 2 years to focus a little less on hardcore and a little more on my career, things are going to change in hardcore, but it's still going to be there. And it's still going to be just as fun for me when I'm able to fully commit again, if I so decide to. I have zero intentions on ever fully stepping out. I always like joke with my girlfriend. I'm like, I'm gonna be 60 years old and still playing 2 steps. I don't care, but it just might not be.
At that point, it might be weekend. Once a year. Yeah, not every single
exactly.
Weekend. Yeah.
I'm like, but shit could change, and you know, Rock could get the craziest tour offer ever, and maybe that tour is more important than my job, you know? And that's kind of like a weird thing. And like, I don't know. I know you probably saw, like, I did that tour with, in March with 93.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was like this crazy offer. Like, at that point, I was ready to quit my job. I was like, if they say I can't go on this tour, I'm quitting my job. I don't care. That ended up being one of the best and worst experiences of my life. Like, we got all our shit stolen, but it's a risk anybody takes anytime they set foot in a van and go on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's all just a day by day. Opportunities come as they do. I just try to focus on what feels like in my gut is the most important at the time.
Yeah, and I think like working, it's very rare, unfortunately, for people to actually work for like an awesome employer that understands what they are passionate about outside of their work. So whether that's brewing beer or, you know, we were talking about the hardcore insurance folk, like those, I'm sure there's some insurance brokers that are like, oh, you're going on tour? Yeah, have fun.
That's so dope.
Like that's probably like one or two within the world, but I think that there are like, I feel like when I was first getting into this whole thing, it was just the classic thing, like quit your job and go on tour. And I think that there are certain, you know, that's a lot of people listening to this podcast have been in those situations where it's like, well,
absolutely.
I
don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah. But I think, as I'm, getting into my 30s now, like now thinking about like having a job set up or working for an employer that gets what I do and like is going to create and actually like stand by their word when push comes to shove, to be able to do that, I think is it's hard to find, but once you find it, you just want to hold on to it. And it sounds like, at least where you're at now, it's like they're aware of it and they understand it. And when those opportunities come, there's discussions and compromises that can be made.
It's very like my boss right now is like told me, he's like, as long as we know, do your thing. Like as long as we know with enough advance, like you're all good to go. But like also, I've had to tell my bandmates like, hey, I can't practice this week because I've got this going on for work. It's really important that I'm there. It's really important to me that I'm there. Making, whether it's working or whether it's like an event that I'm like, I have to go, I have to make connections and like connections that could further my career. And like shouts out to all my bandmates for being more than understanding.
Rot gang.
I know. Shouts out to Rot, Well God Sleeps, and Swingwell. They've all been very understanding of that. But it's also like, nobody knows when they're going to like find their niche. And I really found like I've found my niche recently.
Yeah.
So like, it's just something I really am not willing to risk to play another hardcore show. And that's where it bounces back to, if the offer is right, of course. But it's like at some point I've played 1,000 hardcore shows. Like there's plenty of young bands in the scene. Like ask one of the young bands to play the hardcore show.
Right.
If I'm not working, I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna hang out. But it's all balance.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
but it's also it's just
tough.
like
and it's tough. It's
like,
so tough.
Like shit changes.
I even feel bad like saying that.
No, but I don't think there's anything bad with being like, hey, maybe we're not the local band that has to play this show.
Yeah.
I think that we're all old enough and, like we'll try. It's not that we're trying to say no to that, but like ask someone else.
Absolutely.
A couple other Bev related questions because you're an expert. What is the biggest misconception to you on craft beer? What do you want to dispel?
All right. A, Miller High Life is good. Us as brewers, we drink a lot of domestic beer because we drink shit like this all fucking day long.
Right.
And it's great, and we love it. Sometimes I just want a fucking Coors Light. You know what I mean? Or like,
right.
I really I like Miller Lite a lot. Common misconception is that beer nerds don't like domestic beer. That is not true.
Mm-hmm.
True beer nerds get it. It's a different realm, and it's good. Certain ones are good. The whole IPA thing, how like everybody's seen the memes about people who like IPAs.
Yeah.
I'll admit, they're funny. But
I'll give kudos to the memes.
100%. 100%. But it's also like one of the most highly regarded beer styles of all time. Like,
right.
You know, so it's like crafting a good IPA takes a lot of time and effort and knowledge of what ingredients you're using.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to make a good one. Really easy to make a bad one.
Right. I feel like coffee, like I've talked endlessly on this podcast how much I love iced dirty chais. That's like my go-to drink. I had a realization that a dirty chai is a drink that if you mess up is kind of very mid, but if done perfectly is like
it's great.
Yes.
Absolutely. Same thing as like a lager.
Yes.
Like standard lager beer. If you mess it up, it can be mid. Absolutely. But if it's done right, it's just like the most beautiful thing in the world. It's just like a crisp, clean beer.
What's the most overhyped beer company? Doesn't have to be craft.
You're asking me to actually throw shots out now.
Yeah, I do.
No.
Who's got to go?
Who's got to go?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I can't even do that. I can't even do that.
Yeah, you can. There's a couple.
That. Shit. All right. Overhyped. That's so tough because like everything is so subjective. Like realistically, like there are breweries that are absolutely fucking killing it. There's a brewery. I'm not gonna like name drop here because
this isn't like microbreweries. This is like go after the big macro? Dogs. Yes.
Big dogs? All right. Fucking Busch. Fuck that. I hate that shit. Busch Light. If you hand me a Busch Light, I'm pissed. That shit sucks. Same with like Bud Light. Not a fan.
I feel like Bud Light's only relevancy is because Post Malone drinks it.
Yeah, and it's not good. Like, I'm sorry, Posty, if you're watching this.
Posty, we love you.
But Posty, baby, drink Miller Lite. It's way better. Straight up.
I honestly think that he must be in some kind of contract for them for years.
100%.
Yes.
100%. And like, am I saying that I wouldn't do that?
No.
But shit. Can't do Busch Light. Can't do Bud Light. Everything else is pretty on the table. If you hand it to me, I'm pretty much like, you know what? All right, it's a beer. Let's go.
Okay. Last rapid fire, and then we'll head towards the close.
Totally.
Craziest flavor that you've had, and it was actually good.
I've had a couple like imperial stouts with various chili peppers.
Oh.
So like super chocolatey, dark, barrel-aged beer with like cayenne or like habanero, or like I had one with arbol chilies, and something about the like sticky, chocolatey, dark, malty flavor with the spiciness of the pepper. It works. And I'm a sucker for a good one of those, even though every time I read the bottle, I'm like, this is going to be terrible. Like, this is going to suck. It's going to be spicy chocolate and I'm going to hate it. And I sip it and I'm like, you know what? God damn it. Like,
yeah.
That works.
Yeah, that does sound... That's an experience for sure. I would rather drink
It
that
is, it
over
really is.
Busch Light myself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Alex, this has been an awesome chat. Last
has.
question before we start to wrap up.
What's up? Let's hit it.
Favorite mosh moment that you would like to share? And that's anything that's first to your mind. Could be while you were playing, just at a show that you were attending and watching. Whatever's the first to your dome is how we start to wrap up the show.
Favorite mosh moment?
Mm-hmm. Anything mosh related?
Goddamn. It's not very specific, but watching Heavens Die cover The Devil Wears Prada at Take Hold, like 2017.
Oh.
Everybody in that building was beating the ever-living shit out of each other. And that was still to this day one of my favorite. Like, I'm watching Heavens Die cover a Christian metalcore band. I'm fucking terrified.
Yeah. That's such an
Like,
unlikely pairing.
Yeah.
What?
But it was
do
the
you know
coolest
what
thing
song?
ever. Reptar, King of the Ozone.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was, I want to say it was 2017. Just like, I remember standing in that room and like, being like, this is a cover, or like whatever they said. And I just like, I was just like, no fucking way.
Right.
And just like watching a bunch of Christcore kids beat the shit out of each other to a cover of The Devil Wears Prada. That to this day is one of my favorite mosh moments. I know it's vague.
No, but
I've played a lot of shows. There's a lot of mosh moments.
Yeah.
But
well,
it's a good one.
Alex, we have seen you sweat through your whole shirt.
Oh God, I know.
Fucking champ for just rocking.
This shirt was.
This is why you need to watch the Scoped Exposure podcast and not just be an audio
and
listener.
not just listen to it. You can see my sweaty ass.
All of your band links will be in the description in the YouTube notes. Also, your brewery that you work for as well. Got to give them some love. But if there's anything you want to shout out, anything you want to plug, or anything you want to send the people off with, the floor is yours, my friend.
Shouts out Scoped Exposure. Shouts out Spencer. We've been homies for a minute. I'm very, very thankful to be friends with this beautiful, beautiful man. Very thankful to have had a friendship that has lasted a couple years and hopefully many, 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 many more.
Likewise. Shouts out
Black Stack Brewing. If you're into that kind of thing, check them out. Shit's fire. We make a lot of IPAs. Rot's got a new track coming out somewhat soon. Tracking drums 2 days from now for it. And then just got to finish vocals, and that shit'll be out to the public. It's about a lot of the not so sick things going on in the city of Minneapolis right now. So, classic Rot fashion, very political, but grounded in things that actually matter and not just the internet political things.
Yes. I love that.
Shouts out dogs.
Shout out awesome. To Marty barking on my neighbors.
Shouts out Marty.
Yep.
Shouts out Hams. I think that's all I got. Shouts out Sweat. Oh my God, I can't wait to shower after this. Holy shit.
Alex, all the things that you said about just being friends is like that goes right back to you. I'm really just awesome. I think one of the most beautiful things about hardcore is just how paths cross and then continue to cross. And
I've made some of my best friends in the world through touring and playing shows, and most of them live nowhere near me, and I get to see them once every 2 years.
Right.
But it's like things like this where like we could talk, and it's like I saw you yesterday. You know,
right?
It's
Absolutely.
Just like we didn't skip a beat, and I'm so thankful for that.
course. And yeah, I'm really stoked on just how, you're doing all this like, professional stuff and just like really honing that. And I'm excited to be able to take clips from this podcast and share it in 5 years when you have your own brewery and all that dope shit in the future. Thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Friend. Last note. I did not mean to call shots at Louisville and Kentucky. I hope everyone out there listening understands what I meant by it's being for a band from here, specifically Minnesota, is a lot harder than being a band from areas like that. Yeah. We're all from Midwest. We're all grinding.
Don't give Alex any grief. We all love.
I didn't mean it like that.
Yes.
It's all love.
It's all love.
I haven't gotten to go to the fest myself, but I love everything that LDB is doing. Yeah. Everything that all those bands are doing. It's all a family. We're all doing the same thing. It's not a competition.
No, sir.
We all have the same goal. So
thanks again, Alex.
Thanks, Spencer.